Welcome to the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives, hosted by County Manager Scott Johnson. This podcast is your behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in county government and across our community. We'll talk about the services, projects, and decisions that make Columbia County a great place to live. We're glad you're here. Thanks for listening to the County Compass. Now, here's Scott Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the County Compass. We are so glad that you decided to listen. I'm Columbia County Manager Scott Johnson, and today we're going to take a look back at really one of the most devastating natural disasters in Georgia's history that had a tremendous impact on Columbia County, Hurricane Helene. So why now? Why are we talking about Hurricane Helene again? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, we're celebrating the one-year anniversary of not the storm, but the cleanup efforts. It took us many months to clean Columbia County up, and we're going to kind of dive into that. Secondly, we just received another award for Columbia County's efforts, our team. We've been asked to speak at another conference to help educate other cities and counties, so we're going to talk about that as well. And then also, we had some severe weather in Columbia County this week, and it reminded us of our need to be prepared. So we're going to touch on that. And then last but not least, good news, just received this news that Columbia County got another large chunk of reimbursement from FEMA through our partners at GEMA. So that check has been deposited, and we are well on our way to financial recovery as it relates to the hurricane. So let's talk about the hurricane itself. I know a lot of you were here and you remember that. If you don't live in Columbia County, you didn't experience what happened when Hurricane Helene hit. I'm glad that you didn't have to experience that, but it was devastating, and it really didn't get the national attention that I think it probably should have gotten, mostly because our news stations were wiped out as well, or at least temporarily wiped out as well. So we weren't able to get the message out. We used social media to the best possible extent that we could, but we didn't really get the word out about how bad it was here. But this was a huge, huge storm. When it hit Florida, it was a Category 4 hurricane with winds 80 miles an hour plus. When it moved its way up, I think everybody thought it was kind of headed towards the Atlanta way, and they were bracing and preparing in Atlanta. But it actually turned and came right at us, and we were what I would consider ground zero with winds over 100 miles an hour. And this occurred after multiple days of rain. So we lost some beautiful 100-year-old hardwood trees as a result of this storm, just because the roots were saturated with rain, the ground was extremely soft, and then you take a 100-mile-an-hour wind. It has completely changed our landscape in Columbia County and changed a lot of our lives forever as a result of this storm. But this episode is not about the destruction. It's about Columbia County's response. If you hear a little bit of noise in the background, we do our best to not hear that, but I'd ask that you pardon our progress as we continue to work on things here in Columbia County. So if you hear a little bit of noise, just know what that is. So let's talk about the response, not the destruction. Let's talk about what Columbia County did, the swift action, the tireless work, the community unity. So proud of the way our community came together during the hurricane, and really that long road to recovery. This is an amazing story of resilience, and it's an amazing story of Columbia County pulling together and having what we need to be able to provide services to our entire county. This wasn't just one part of Columbia County. It wasn't just Martinez or Evans. It was Appling, it was Harlem, it was Grovetown, and beyond. It was really the entire central Savannah River area that was struck. But again, Columbia County was ground zero here. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this week, because we were just recently recognized by the Georgia City County Management Association. We received the Large County Program Award. And what that award is every year the awards committee at the Georgia City County Managers Association combs through nominations, and they decide who should be the recipient of this particular award. Our county was nominated because of our hurricane efforts, the response and the cleanup efforts. And we were up against some pretty tough programs. As a matter of fact, I spoke to one of my colleagues from one of the metro Atlanta counties, and she was a little upset that Columbia County took this award home because her project was great. And I encouraged her to apply again next year because Columbia County deserved this. Our employees deserve this, and we are greatly honored and humbled to be able to get that award, and very much appreciate the Georgia City County Management Association, the president and the awards committee, and all the folks that made that possible for us. Again, being recognized for the response. So let's talk about the hurricane itself. It didn't sneak up on us. We knew it was coming. We knew there was a hurricane brewing in the Gulf. We started days earlier getting everything ready. Governor Kemp declared a state of emergency. He declared a state of emergency for all 159 counties in Georgia. That gives you an idea about we didn't really know where it was going to go or what it was going to do. We just knew that Georgia was going to be hit and probably hit pretty hard. So we did what we always do. We stood up our Emergency Operations Center. Our EMA agency is led by Director Sean Granado. He has done outstanding work there. He's done outstanding work in the interim since the hurricane struck with getting the reimbursements that we're going to talk about in a little while. But we got right to work. We pre-positioned all of our contracts. We had debris contracts already in place. There were other counties that were struggling at the last minute trying to figure out who was going to come in and help clean up. And fortunately for Columbia County, because we had pre-positioned contracts, we were able to start that immediately. We were able to coordinate with Georgia Power and the other utilities. And as we stood up our EOC, we made space for them in the EOC where we could all coordinate and collaborate and work together. And that's really what helped our efforts, and really what kind of makes this thing worthy of being award-winning is the fact that there was so much collaboration and so many people working together, getting things done. We even opened shelters. Historically, we've waited for some of our volunteer organizations to do that, but Columbia County has understood and recognized the need for being able to do this swiftly. So we actually opened our own shelter very quickly, and we now have everything necessary to be able to provide that type of service to our citizens should they need it. I remember Chairman Duncan was quoted as saying this. He said, our department heads and employees, for our department heads and employees to respond as quickly as they did to get our roads open ahead of the power crews, with plans and contracts already in place, we responded as well as any community could have. And I think that's true. I remember having a conversation, and you may have heard this story before. I was talking to one of my county manager colleagues who's a little further up the interstate. I called him on I believe, day 2 of the storm, and he said, hey, I think heard you guys got hit pretty hard down there. How's everything now? And I said, we're just beginning. The county is actually devastated. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm cleaning the leaves out of my pool. So I was far from cleaning leaves out of I don't have a pool, but I was far from doing anything like that. But it was just ironic that he would mention that just a few miles up the interstate. They really didn't have a lot. And the reason I was calling him was to see if we could just really get some services, because we didn't really have anything open here. There was no power here. And I want to talk to him about that. But he made a comment. He said, hey, I don't mean this the wrong way, but I'm really glad that it hit Columbia County and not my county. And I told him, I said, well, I don't mean this the wrong way, but I'm glad it hit our county and not your county too, because we are prepared. We are resilient. Our residents are strong. Now, granted, I wish it wouldn't have hit anyone, and I wish it wouldn't have hit us, and I wish it wouldn't have caused the amount of damage that it did to our community. But Columbia County was ready. And you're right, Mr. Chairman, I believe we responded as well as any community could have. I did ask our director, Sean Granado, to reflect on the hurricane and kind of what happened as we were leading up into those hours before the storm. And he said, Scott, the night before we were at the EOC watching the forecast, and when Helene hit early Friday morning, it was a Thursday night going into Friday morning, he said trees were coming down everywhere. We lost power and communications were spotty, but our teams were really working. This was through the night. We ended up having some of our fire apparatus damaged, ambulances. We had patrol cars damaged, and we had debris falling all over the county, so much so that we actually had to suspend operations during the middle of the storm just for the safety of the first responders. And then we were able to immediately go back and just try to start picking up the pieces and put things together. But he said, we pushed through. We were ready and we pushed through, and he's exactly right. We did push through. In Columbia County alone, we lost a life tragically here. Over 5,000 homes damaged in some way. 200, I would say over 200 completely destroyed. Our roads were impassable with downed trees and power lines. 100% of our residents in Columbia County and most in Richmond County were without power, without internet, without cell service, no gas, no groceries, no anything, except for faith in our local government to respond. And that's what local government's here for. We are here to respond in situations like this, and I'm thankful for our citizens that have allowed us the opportunity to be able to respond the way we did. We had a lot of flooding in the low-lying areas, and it was really, truly the most destructive storm that I think really Georgia has ever had. I know Georgia Power said it was the worst storm in their history of Georgia Power operating in Georgia. So it was huge. But we didn't wait for help to arrive. We actually got to work. We got to work immediately. As soon as we could get to the Emergency Operations Center, as soon as we could get our folks activated, and it was county employees in every way, shape, and form. We had everybody that could get to work. And then with the help of our contractors and those pre-positioned contracts, we were able to clear at least one lane of the 800 miles of road we have in Columbia County in the first couple of days. By Monday, at least we had one lane open. And then the debris removal became this massive operation, and we had over 60 days of nonstop cleanup. By early 2026, so after it hit September 27th, and then the rest of that year there was a lot of coordinated effort and getting power back. Many people without power for over a week. Some people even up to 2 weeks were without power. We removed millions of yards of debris in Columbia County, and we had to establish sites to be able to mulch that. And unfortunately, the mulch wasn't able to be given away. So not only did we have to pick it up, take it somewhere, and mulch it, then we had to take the mulch somewhere else to store it so it could just return to its natural state in the ground just by spreading it out over the field. But we had enough for hundreds of football fields when we were spreading this mulch out. We had over 145 trucks at our daily peak picking up trash and debris. And, unfortunately, we couldn't get roofing and shingles and those sort of things. We were just focused on that. But we had other partners in place, and we were able to kind of coach our residents on how to do that. And I'm very glad to say that the Columbia County is very much back after the storm today. And it's I say it's a distant memory. It's not too distant, but it is a bit of a memory now. The federal and state aid kicked in pretty quick. We were talking to our partners at FEMA and GEMA very early on. We knew that this was going to be expensive. We knew that we were going to have to make some sacrifices and do some things differently to be able to afford this. There are not a lot of counties that are able to do that, but Columbia County is very well positioned. Because of our fiscal conservatism, we're able to have the money that we needed to be able to do this. So we did that. FEMA actually stepped up also and started allowing grants for repairs and temporary housing and low-interest loans. Small Business Administration kicked in, trying to help businesses. It was neighbor helping neighbor. People were out there, working on sawing trees down and cleaning up and those sort of things. So really, it was everybody from the state, from local to state to federal, and then all the way back down to just neighbor helping neighbor, getting everything done. So we did receive reimbursements from FEMA. I talked about that, and And people ask sometimes, when we get a big check, what are you going to do with that check? Well, in this case, this is all reimbursement money. So Columbia County doesn't have $85 million, which is what this cost, almost $85 million. We don't have $85 million laying around. We shouldn't have $85 million laying around. But we do have money in the bank for projects and things that are earmarked for other things. So we were able to put a lot of that stuff on hold, knowing that a lot of our time and effort and energy would be focused to the cleanup efforts. So we decided to use that money and then reimburse it back into the project accounts and then pick the projects up later. So that's exactly what we're doing now. But I guess by late 2025 and into 26, our reimbursements exceeded $50 million of the almost $85 million. And I'm very proud to report that just a day or so ago, we got another check or checks totaling $14 million. Now, folks, this doesn't happen just arbitrarily or automatically or without intent or work. Our staff has done amazing work documenting every single thing that we needed to document to make sure that we could get the full amount of reimbursement. And I am confident that we will get back the maximum amount of money allowed to us. So we're still working towards that. And thanks to that pre-planning, thanks to the strong partnerships, thanks to our staff for documenting everything very well, because the federal government wants every I dotted and every T crossed. If it's not, they'll send it back to you. So fortunately for us, we were able to do that. And I would say at this point, we're probably 9 to 12 million short of what we expect to get back. But we expect to get back the majority of that. So I think Columbia County is going to be in really, really good shape. Now we've already collected over $70 million, and we still are looking forward to another $9 to $12 million that will make us as whole as we can be. Now, it wasn't 100% reimbursable, so the county is going to be out some money. But we are prepared for that, and we are prepared to move forward. I know I mentioned it before in previous episodes. I talked about the award-winning staff in Columbia County, but I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to talk about it here again, just for just a second. The fact that our EMA in Columbia County earned the statewide honor of EMA of the Year for 2025. Very well deserved. It's the first time in county history that we've ever received that award. And it says a lot about the strength and the leadership shown here in Columbia County. So, again, EMA, keep up the good work. So 1 year later, where are we? What's going well? A year and a half later. Again, most of the homes are in better shape. Insurance companies have come through and worked well to clean up Columbia County and help with Columbia County. I know there are some people that are still waiting on settlements and those sort of things, and I hate that. I hate that people have to go through that. But for the most part, our community is back to where it needed to be. I think we did the best we could, but, there's always lessons to be learned. And one such lesson to be learned was exercised again just this week. Now, things seem to happen at the absolute worst times. So we had a storm this week, and I happened to be at a conference. I was at the Georgia City County Management Association conference receiving the award that I discussed earlier in the podcast. Deputy County Manager Glenn Kennedy was with me at that conference. Our EMA Director, Sean Granado, was in training at the training center in Forsyth earlier this week. So there were a couple of us that were out of pocket. Deputy County Manager Matt Schlochter was actually here at the county. He was making sure the operations were going on. And then, of course, we had the folks at EMA doing their normal jobs. But as luck would have it, I'm out of town. Mr. Kennedy's out of town. Mr. Granado's out of town. And we have a storm that hits. We were notified of a tornado warning by the National Weather Service. Now, what is a tornado warning? I think it's important to point out here that it's different than it used to be, because I remember the tornado watch meaning that conditions were favorable, and a tornado warning meaning that a tornado had actually touched down somewhere. That has actually been changed a bit now. Tornado warning now means that there's a rotation that has been spotted. It doesn't mean that a tornado has touched down. So when the National Weather Service issued a tornado warning for Columbia County and surrounding areas earlier this week, it sent people into a bit of a panic. We were there. We were prepared, even though I wasn't here and Mr. Kennedy wasn't here, Mr. Granado wasn't here. Our EMA and EOC sprung into action. Our Director of Public Relations, Cassidy Harris, immediately went to the Emergency Operations Center and started sending out alerts, letting people know what was happening in our community. Now, we have to walk a fine line there. We don't want to send out alerts to make people scared when they shouldn't be, but we also have a responsibility to keep the public notified. So we sent out a lot of alerts, and a lot of those alerts were countywide, just based on the information that we were getting. So we were there. We were putting the information out. Now, fortunately for us, there was no tornado. But let me give you a very specific example. I was on the phone with our Vice Chair, Allison Couch, who lives out in the Harlem area, and she said, Scott, the wind out here is really bad. I haven't received any alerts yet. I know that there are some going out. You know, what can we do to notify people? So we were working through that process fast and furious, making sure that we could get the information out the best that we could. And as soon as the wind stopped, she called me back to let me know that she was en route to the Emergency Operations Center to help any way she could. Well, fortunately, it was a strong thunderstorm, and it was very quick. 15 minutes or less, it passed through our county, and then it was gone. So what's the moral of this story? What is the lesson learned here? The lesson learned here is you need to sign up for HyperReach. You can go to our website, scroll down to the bottom of the page. You'll see the ability to sign up for HyperReach. This is the way the county communicates with you directly. So this is something directly to your cell phone. Whether it's a weather event, whether it's a road closure in your area, whatever the case may be. Now, yesterday, I know there were people earlier this week, I know there are people that were frustrated that they received too many hyper alerts. Well, that puts us in a bad situation. I mean, so, the county is sometimes, I guess, chastised for not communicating well enough, and then sometimes we're chastised for over-communicating. Well, we're going to err on the side of caution, and we're going to send out the information. So if anybody unsubscribed from HyperReach earlier, I would encourage you to rethink that and sign back up for HyperReach. We're not going to misuse this. This was one event where you may have gotten several alerts, and then you walked outside and you looked up and you didn't see anything coming. But next time that may not be the case. Next time it may be that you're truly in your bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and a hurricane is approaching and you need to know. Or we may be shutting down your road, or there may be an armed fugitive in your area that we need to notify you about. I would encourage you to sign up for HyperReach and just take my promise that we're not going to abuse that. We're not going to throw anything out like that just for no reason, but we're going to try to communicate with you the best we can. So I say all that to say that Hurricane Helene tested us like never before, but Columbia County really proved what we're made of. It was neighbor helping neighbor. It was leaders stepping up. It was a shared commitment to rebuild, and it was a great example of local government in action. Thanks to our progress. As promised, I always end with the most ridiculous thing that I've heard lately. Now, I will say that right now we are in election season, so I'm hearing a lot of ridiculous things, but I'm not going to talk about those. That's not what we're here for. Although I may have a future podcast on what elections look like locally and how to get engaged in your community. But for now, we're going to stay away from that topic, and I'm going to tell you about the most ridiculous thing that I've actually heard lately. Many of you know that Columbia County has for a long time been looking to potentially put a interchange off Interstate 20 near Louisville Road. And this interchange was going to help support the county and the growth of the county, but really it was for the fort. Fort Gordon is doing well, and we all know that it's home to Army Cyber and it's home to NSA, and it's really doing a lot for America's mission today, supporting America's mission. So there needs to be some more access to Fort Gordon, and we've been working on this project. I know we did an interchange justification report a few years ago. I think we've maybe been working on this project, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. But what I actually heard this week was we did have another meeting with some of the stakeholders and trying to see, when we could advance this project and when funding may be available for this project. And it will be a combination of state and federal and local. But what I heard that was ridiculous was Fort Gordon will be expanding all the way to Interstate 20, that they're going to be condemning the land and expanding their operations off of the current fort's footprint all the way to Interstate 20, taking many family farms and properties and stuff like that. Folks, that's ridiculous. We've not heard that the fort's expanding, and I'm not saying that they will never expand, but an expansion like that is extremely unlikely. It's not being contemplated. It's nothing that I've heard outside of people just talking about that. So the fact that we're looking at an interchange that may help support Fort Gordon and its efforts does not mean that the fort itself is going to be expanding and condemning people's property and stuff like that. So, again, absolutely ridiculous, but people talk about it. They throw it out on social media. Other people start talking about it. Then people get in an uproar about something that is just absolutely not true. And in my case, I think it's ridiculous. So just wanted to end on that like we always do. I did have one more update for you. I forgot to throw it in there. I mentioned in our last episode about the bill that was progressing through the House and the Senate about tax relief in Columbia County. Glad to report that is still progressing. That bill is still alive and well. So I will continue to update you on that, but I did make you a promise in the last episode to let you know about that. We are extremely excited about the ability to be able to provide property tax relief to our residents in Columbia County, hopefully to the point that you won't have to pay any property taxes to your local government. That's really the goal. And I'll keep you updated on that, but I did make you that promise, and I want to make sure that I stuck to that. So until next time, I hope you will continue to tune in, continue to engage Columbia County. If you have any ideas about something you'd like to hear in the podcast, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to the county manager's office. You can reach out to Cassidy Harris, our public relations director, and we'll be glad to take a look at those and give you the information that you want. Again, until then, I am very glad and proud to live in Columbia County, and I hope that those of you that live here, I hope you are too. Take care.
This has been the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to stay informed about the issues, initiatives, and people impacting our community. And we sincerely hope today's conversation helps you better understand the work being done in Columbia County. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. As always, visit Columbia County's official website or social media channels for additional information. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.